Welcome to Frontlines. We welcome our viewers from across the United States and Canada. Welcome to Frontlines. We welcome our viewers from Europe and the Middle East, from South America and Australia, and of course, from Armenia and Artsakh. It is overwhelming. It is issue upon issue, crisis upon crisis, urgency upon urgency, need upon need, and each day delivers our people a new torment, a new torture, a new existential moment. And each one is deserving of our complete attention, of our complete energy, deserving of our complete efforts at helping restore the lives, restore the dignity, and restore the hope of our brothers and sisters living in extreme hardship that has become all too common. Nothing surprises anymore. Nothing at all. And that hardship is tremendous on all fronts. Azerbaijan has blockaded the only road connecting Artsakh to Armenia now for nearly 120 days. Shortages, ambushes, further territorial encroachments, further indignities, further intimidation, further terror, and further uncertainty. It's a harsh and unbearable reality that is layered upon all the other unbearable realities we have endured in less than 2.5 years. War and bloodshed, death and dismemberment, physical destruction and psychological trauma, families uprooted, children displaced, the young man left motherless, the child left fatherless, the elderly left childless. And of course, our Armenian POWs, some still held in captivity for over 845 days under the hand of Baku. 845 days and nights in torment, uncertainty, an entire symphony of unending pain. For the brave Armenian souls, yes, but also for the families of those brave souls who stand in these moments of utter darkness with them, but away from them. It's perhaps easy, and perhaps even necessary for one's own psychological preservation to become numb to the degradation, to the loss, to the indignity, to the sheer overwhelm of it all. Perhaps it's even human just to turn away for a moment and try to return to the normalcy of lives detached from this extraordinary pain. But we know that there are those who do not have that luxury, those who cannot turn away even for a moment, who sit waiting for that phone call, that information from the Red Cross, maybe a sound from their loved one. And to be part of a nation and to be part of a people, indeed to be human beings with empathy, we cannot turn away either. We cannot pretend that we have no voice in it, no stock in it, because we do. We must care, and we must voice that we care. This morning, a dear friend from Artsakh reminded me of an Aristotle quote. It says, "Tolerance and apathy are the last virtues of a dying society." We cannot allow ourselves to be apathetic. We cannot allow ourselves to tolerate the intolerable. We cannot allow ourselves to normalize the unnatural. The situation with our POWs is intolerable. Their return is and must remain always our collective struggle. Today, we're going to take a deep dive into one of those monumental struggles and feel what we should feel and should have felt for each of those 845 days and nights. And in listening to the story, I urge you to heed Garo's and my call to keep every flame lit for every one of our POWs and for every family of our POWs until each one returns home. And with that, Garo, would you please introduce our very special guest?
Well, first of all, thank you, Karnig. Let me just say this. Good morning, everyone in Stepanakert, in Yerevan, in Beirut, in Athens, and good evening, everyone in the United States, and good day, everywhere else. We continue to work. We continue to work as we started Frontlines from September 27, 2020, and we were on the air for 44 consecutive days during the 44 days of nonstop bombing and attacks onto residential communities of Artsakh and surrounding areas. Who would have known that on November 9th, when there was a trilateral agreement signed and people went about gathering their belongings and moving about, they were going to be held captive and taken to Baku, imprisoned and kept this entire time while we continue on living in four corners of the world. So we return this evening in the United States and this morning elsewhere with a new episode of Frontlines to talk about the forgotten that ought not be forgotten, to talk about the issues that are of foremost importance to so many of us, to talk about human rights, dignity, and the right to freedom from oppression and from harsh conditions that no one should suffer. Joining us today is Amine Georges Bachir, a lawyer from Beirut, Lebanon, who represents one of those souls who is still languishing in prison, Vicken Euljeckjian. Joining us as well is Vicken Euljeckjian's wife, Linda Euljeckjian. Joining us is one of my favorite journalists, a research fellow at the Philos Institute, Philos Project, Uzay Bulut, who continues to shed light on the issues that not enough people worry or talk or do something about. And joining us, my dear friend and brother of Karnig and I, the former human rights defender of the Republic of Armenia, who saw the four-day war of 2016, who lived through the 44-day war of 2020, the director of now the Tatoyan Foundation Center for Law and Justice, Arman Tatoyan. Welcome, everyone. Karnig? Thank you.
Thank you, Garo, and welcome to our guests. And I think perhaps I want to start it with Baron Tatoyan and Ms. Bulut to give us kind of a summary of where things are today, now nearly 2.5 years after the signing of the trilateral statement. What is the status of the POWs, the Armenian POWs held now in Baku, and what can you tell us about the efforts that have been undertaken on their behalf?
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Kerkonian. I am very glad to greet all our friends, guests, and thank you, Mr. Ghazarian, for your great introduction of all our colleagues. Now, as for the question related to the prisoners of war, definitely, well, it is very obvious that Azerbaijan continues keeping illegally Armenian POWs, and of course they have been blocking every legal way of solving the issue, and only using the prisoners of war for their military or political benefits. This is nothing more than trafficking even in human beings, because Azerbaijan continues keeping them, and these people are under threat of, they are being tortured and are under threat of real threat for their lives. And it is very apparent that they're violating absolute prohibitions of the international humanitarian law and absolute requirements, because everyone, relies very often on the clause number 8, on the point number 8 of the trilateral statement that Azerbaijan has to return. But I have to say that the release or repatriation of prisoners of war is an absolute requirement of the international humanitarian law. So if we imagine that for a moment that this specific provision is not in the trilateral statement, so would that be possible for Azerbaijan not to return Armenian prisoners of war? Of course not. But why they keep them? They launch criminal proceedings and they use them for their, as I said, military and political benefits. Now what we have, according to our statistics, we have so far 33 prisoners of war confirmed, but by the way, these are numbers that are confirmed by Azerbaijan that are still in captivity in Azerbaijan, 33. We have 173 prisoners of war who were released and returned to Armenia since the 44-day war. And we have 80 prisoners of war that are not confirmed by Azerbaijan, but we have credible and objective evidence that show them being under the control of the Azerbaijani armed forces, so that we consider them as cases of enforced disappearance, and which are definitely also regulated by the international law. And apparently, it is very apparent that Azerbaijan continues committing these war crimes, and this is a continuous crime, and doing everything just only to cause tension and the problems, not only to the families of the Armenian society, families of these people, but also to the Armenian society, causing tensions. And several times, Azerbaijani president announced, even we know their famous conversation between the first lady of Turkey and the president of Azerbaijan, who are even discussing how they have to do this, the transfer of Armenian prisoners, having as an exchange political benefits. This could be so far my reaction. Thank you.
I want to ask Amine a very simple question. You know, it must be very frustrating for a lawyer when you know that the system is not working the way it's supposed to work, whether it's in a courtroom or whether it's in an international setting where, unfortunately, you know, law is one thing, but politics is something entirely different. The trilateral statement agreement, if you will, between Russia, Azerbaijan, and Armenia provided for the exchange of prisoners, and it did not take place entirely the way it was supposed to, because Armenia returned any and all prisoners it had, but Azerbaijan did not. One such prisoner is a fellow Lebanese Armenian, because I take pride in the fact that I am too a fellow Lebanese Armenian who is now a United States naturalized citizen living in the United States. So, as I understand it, Vicken Euljeckjian was trying to relocate because of the economic conditions being harsh in Beirut, and he had gone to Armenia. He had purchased himself a vehicle, tried to start this service of transportation, if you will, and he was planning to bring his wife and two children, who I believe are 20 and 23 years old, to relocate to native homeland Armenia, which all of us Armenians, as the descendants of the Armenian genocide, we all, you know, we love and adore our adopted homelands, whether it's Lebanon or United States or anywhere else in the world, but we of course have a special connection to Armenia. So when he was trying to, at the ceasefire, he was trying to gather his belongings and move, he gets captured and transported to Baku along with a family friend. The family friend eventually gets released sometime later. He, unfortunately, is tried, and by all reports, it appears he did not have all the benefits of due process that we know in the Western world, and he gets sentenced to 20 years in prison, where he is now being held in solitary confinement. Now, as a Lebanese citizen, he is a dual citizen, including Republic of Armenia. I don't know what efforts any of these countries are undertaking. I confess I'm not aware of any, if there are any. What efforts, if any, you as a lawyer in Lebanon on the ground are able to engage, whether it's the Lebanese Maronite or Catholic or other church, whether it's the Lebanese authorities, whether it's the Armenian authorities, or you know, I mean, Karnig is an international lawyer. I don't know, is there a mechanism for him to appeal his sentence to the European Court of Human Rights if he was denied his right to appeal, as I understand it? What can you tell us, Amine?
First of all, let me clarify that, as you said, Mr. Garo, that Vicken has a dual citizenship. He's Lebanese, yes, he has a passport, Lebanese ID, but he's an Armenian from long time ago, because he's a descendant of an Armenian family, and already he got his passport and his Armenian ID and Armenian passport since 2017. So before the war started, before the new episode of crisis started, he already has his Armenian passport and Armenian citizenship and Armenian ID. So why I'm saying that, just to clarify and to confirm that the legal situation of Vicken is not a mercenary. He's a citizen of Armenia. And by the law, international law, and by the Geneva Convention, his situation shall be treated as a member of Armenian people. So what he did, he wasn't a mercenary act. He was defending his homeland, his country, and that's why he shall be treated based on Geneva Convention, which is not the case. All the trial, the judicial proceedings happened in Baku was against the real facts and against the law. Why? Minimum of basics of international norms was not respected. First of all, he was accused that he was mercenary. He wasn't mercenary. His legal situation, he is Armenian person holding a passport and ID. Before the war, he wasn't in the war. He only participated in 4 days during the period of the war. And when he was returning back to Artsakh to take his belongings, he was captured. His detainment wasn't during war procedure.
Yes,
exactly. Second, the base of his trial was based on a affidavit or a certificate, oral verbal certificate from one of his friends. She was with him.
Oh,
it was
the one that was coerced to confess and give.
She was obliged. Exactly.
Yes. She admitted
she
that.
Was, exactly.
Yes.
Yes. She was obliged and tortured to said what they told her to say about him, that he was paid and other things.
But I mean, I want you to continue, but it's important to note when he was captured, they searched his car. There were no weapons, nothing to indicate that he was member of any military force, right?
Nothing at all. Even he was in civilian clothes. He wasn't armed. He wasn't in an army costume or uniform. He was coming back to Artsakh just to take his belongings. Nothing more than that. All the accusation was based on some photos on his cell phone and about some certificates. Was obliged to said as the Azerbaijan authorities obliged Maral to say. All his detainment and imprisonment period was against law, and the trial unfair, was against international law, wasn't transparent and wasn't independent, because as Geneva Convention stipulate, he should give him the possibility to choose his lawyer. This wasn't the fact. The Azerbaijani authorities nominated his lawyer, and he didn't get the possibility to get the minimum of advocacy or any lawyer to help him to defend his case. Now, after even the sentence of 20 years of prison, what we are trying to do is to go to Azerbaijan or to get help with any Turkish law firm, excuse me, to help him to get or to make an appeal of the sentence. What we tried before is to contact more than 3 or 4 law firms in Azerbaijan. No one of these law firms replied to us or contact back to us because, you know, as we know, maybe they are afraid of the reaction of the Azerbaijani authorities. What we are planning to do, certainly with the acceptance of Linda and the Vicken's family, is to get the help of Turkish law firm. Why Turkish law firm? Because as you know, all of us, the relationship between Turkey and Azerbaijan is very good. And what we are trying to do is to get the legal help from a Turkish law firm. Till now, we couldn't do that because a lot of obstacles. One of them is the lack of money, of the lack of the situation of Vicken's family. To return back to the main point of your question, Mr. Garo, all the trial was not respecting the minimum basics of what Geneva Convention stipulates about the prisoners of war. All the basis of the accusation was not real, was not based on facts or proofs or something that could support the accusation or even the sentence of 20 years of prison. 3, even Geneva Convention and the armistice ceasefire signed between the 2 countries obliged 2 countries to release all the prisoners of war, and this is not happening. All the help that we are getting now is via the International Red Cross, and we are so thankful and grateful of their help or their what they are doing, because this is the maximum maybe what they can do. What we are asking for or what we are aiming for is to get or to do the minimum of legal help of Vicken and to try to do an appeal of his verdict and to clarify and to defend him, to let the trial be independent and fair, and to the final objective is to release and liberate Vicken in this detainment and unfair and unlawful imprisonment since 10 November 2020.
Thank you. You know, this you mentioned Turkey, and I think amongst all of us here at this discussion, Uzay Bulut probably knows more about Turkey than any of us. Uzay, you are a very courageous journalist. You know, I follow you. You and I have communicated over the course of the last couple of years. I'm a big admirer of your hard work. What can you tell us about the feasibility of law firms maybe in Turkey? I am not a big fan of the Turkish jurisprudence. I have personal experience, Karnig and I, with claims that have to do with the Republic of Turkey, but maybe there are law firms there that have the ability to rise above the political gamesmanship and do human rights work. If there are, I'm not aware of any. Uzay, what can you tell us? I know you. I don't know if Uzay is it accurate to say that you are a dissident or you are persecuted by the current government in Turkey? Because I know you don't live in Turkey and you're very vocal and critical about many of the policies that the Turkish government espouses to with respect to human rights and things of that sort. What can you tell us?
Well, I think that reaching out to some law firm or firms in Turkey and seeking their help might be a good idea, because I think all efforts should be made to help secure Vicken's release. There must be some decent, honorable, brave lawyers there. There are human rights lawyers, and they are persecuted by the government as well. So I think it's a worthwhile effort to try to reach them and just see if they would be willing to help Vicken. But of course, if they do that, they will be taking a huge risk, but that's what real human rights lawyers do, right? So I agree with Amine, and because unfortunately Vicken and his family and his lawyers don't seem to have a lot of options to seek his release, I think that would be, I think that's a worthy effort. We don't know what will happen without trying. I do know that there are good human rights lawyers there, but is there a human rights lawyer who would really have the courage to take on this case? I don't know.
You know, I think I wanted to ask Linda a question, if I may, because, you know, we talk about the legal ramifications and the legal structure to all of this, but there's a deeply personal aspect.
Exactly.
Exactly. If I may, Linda, ask you about what the last 2.5 years have been like for you, for your family, for your children. I know it's been, I can imagine, maybe I can't imagine how difficult this is, but I think our viewers would really appreciate hearing from you as to what the personal toll is, the personal burden is that you feel.
And the first, sorry for my language, because I speak Arabic. So my language in English is not well, but we live in hell. That's 2 years. We are also dead. Vicken, he is dead. He is not alive. Not mean alive. He have a soul. No, he's already dead in this prison. I need.
You know, Linda, look, we don't want to confuse the audience. What you're saying is he's alive in prison, but he is the same as being dead because he's emotionally is very much weakened. And I know this because you wrote an appeal. You wrote an appeal a few days ago because of fake news. Thank God it was fake news. People talking that Vicken was severely beaten, and I don't even want to say it, but that Vicken was killed in prison. But of course, with the efforts of the International Red Cross, you found out the last couple of days that that's not correct. And I believe you had a very short conversation with Vicken, if I'm not mistaken. And I hope that you each time, and I know that you don't have conversations often, because the last time you had a conversation with him was in January. It was very short. And it was also one that made you feel what you are saying, that Vicken is alive, but he's dead because of what he has gone through and what he must be going through every day. I hope that you give him encouragement and hope, because many people, from Uzay writing about it, to I know Arman Tatoyan contacting personally the International Red Cross representatives, to Amine working day and night, to Karnig and I, and many, many like us who are constantly thinking that, while we're living our lives, Vicken and many others like Vicken are languishing in very horrific conditions in prison cells in Baku. So I want you to pass on my warmest thoughts not only to him, but your daughter, your son, Vicken's family. I understand he has family in Lebanon. And I want you all to keep the faith, please.
And maybe it's better, Linda, if you can continue in Arabic so you feel free and you express more clearly.
We have a translator, so express your thoughts in Arabic.
Since we have the
I will speak in Arabic, please.
Yes,
I will speak in Arabic.
please.
I don't want to ما حدا يفهمني غلط. أنا عم بقول إنه فيكان هو عايش بس نحن صرنا ميتين. فيكان بريء. فيكان مفروض إنه يطلع. ما في شيء بيمنع خروجه. أنا عم بطلب من الكل، كل حدا قادر يكون حد فيكان يساعده، يوقف حده، يوقف حدنا. نحن بحاجة لفيكان. نحن منا عايشين. نحن already ميتين.
Vicken is alive. He's innocent, but we are dead. He should be released. I request everyone to help Vicken, to support Vicken, to stand by him, to stand by us. We are in a dire need of help. He is alive, but we are dead.
Thank you. I want to very briefly return to Uzay and then turn it over to you, to Karnig, to inquire from Arman. Uzay, there are international journalists who clearly are either taking bribes or on the payroll of the Azerbaijani government because of the nonstop publication of false news. Is there an organization that sanctions or warns or blacklists, if you will, journalists who don't adhere to journalistic integrity? Is there any such agency?
Well, there are many international journalist associations, and I don't know if they're aware of the activities of those so-called journalists, because, how can any objective, principled, decent person look at what's going on in Artsakh and in Armenia and look at what Turkey and Azerbaijan have been doing to Armenians and try to distort those facts and not understand that this is an ongoing war, aggressive war against Armenians, a second Armenian genocide. That's what it is. So all you need is just eyes and a brain and an objective mindset to understand what's going on. You can just, study the history of the region and then talk to Linda, talk to her about what Vicken is going through. So these people really, is it really worth it to sell your soul like that when an indigenous nation is being persecuted, tortured, and attacked by two powerful armies? Obviously they are being bribed by Azerbaijan because, look, it's really not a complicated situation there. The aggressor is clear, the victims are clear. So but I'm not sure those journalist associations are aware of the activities or the type of reporting these journalists are engaging in. But definitely they should be warned about those journalists because they are bringing a terrible name to our occupation, and they are misleading the people. They are misinforming their readers, their audience, and that costs lives. Really, that costs the lives of innocent Armenians, innocent people. So I really condemn these people. I think they are immoral people.
Thank you, Karnig.
Yeah, Arman, we're not working in a vacuum here with this particular experience with Vicken and with the other POWs. And when I say we're not working in a vacuum, I mean during your tenure as human rights defender and afterward at the Tatoyan Foundation, you've had interactions with former POWs. What can you, because the story that the emotions that Linda has communicated tell of, you know, situations that are beyond comprehension to most people in the Western world as to what's happening. What have your interviews and your research revealed as to the conditions of the POWs, and where does that? And I know that you're on the UN Torture Commission, and you've done a lot of work in a number of countries regarding the issue of detainment and prisoners. What have you learned in terms of the process? What can you tell us about what these POWs are going through? Because we have a wealth of information from the interviews done with those that have returned.
Well, all of them, every prisoner of war, once from the very first moment, when they appeared under the control of Azerbaijani armed forces, they were severely tortured. They were severely tortured not only immediately after their captivity, but also in prisons of Baku, in special forces, in special detention facilities of Baku. And yes, we had interviews with all of the prisoners of all wars, that returned. So I specifically mean the 44-day war, and I also mean the military aggression and the war initiated by Azerbaijan on November 16 in 2021, and also especially the war of September 13 to 14, which Azerbaijan initiated last year. I have to say that from the very beginning that their purpose is to humiliate and to torture Armenians as much as they can. And they know that it is highly protected and supported by the authorities of Azerbaijan. This is under the sponsorship of Azerbaijani authorities. These people, first of all, the very important thing is when they are torturing them, especially in the battlefield, they film usually their victims whom they are torturing, and they publish these videos with one purpose: to become heroes of their society, because they are confident they will be praised for it. Moreover, they are with open faces, so it means they are not scared, they're not afraid of any responsibility, because they're confident that their authorities will be only encouraging their action. Moreover, we have conducted a special analysis of the videos. So with our specialists, we translated all the Azerbaijani, everything what they speak about in their videos. And it is very clear that they are inspired by the authorities of Azerbaijan. They are using even the same words as authorities of Azerbaijan, as the president of Azerbaijan, as different as public figures, such as very famous popular singers, writers. So these are the same. I have also to say that there is a very interesting tendency. The Azerbaijani, these people were so tortured and humiliated, and are still tortured and humiliated, not only by the special forces and by military or people in uniform, but also civilians who were engaged to this torture by the military. For example, we had prisoners of war who told us that Azerbaijani soldiers could stop, for example, at a certain village on their way to Baku, and the civilians could approach and start beating these people, start humiliating them. Armenian POWs. Usually their eyes are blindfolded. They have no possibility to see, but in certain cases they could also see. We have testimonies, quite credible, claiming that when they were even transferred for example, for some medical so-called examination to civilian hospitals in Azerbaijan, patients, doctors had the possibility to humiliate and even torture these people. So this is and by the way, they have been using not only physical torture, but also mental suffering. This is also infliction of mental suffering. For example, every time when Azerbaijani soldier entered the cell of an Armenian POW, they had to stand up and to say Karabakh is Azerbaijan. If you do not say this, then they will be tortured even to death. And another thing is that they were not allowed to eat. I mean, these are different. There are different forms of humiliation. But I have to say that they also try to implement their policies through these people, prisoners of war. So, for instance, several, especially prisoners of war who returned after the September 13-14 war. So they said that Azerbaijani military armed forces or soldiers had special books about current Armenia, about the Republic of Armenia. And these books were like titled, for example, Western Azerbaijan, or how Armenia belongs to Azerbaijan, or Armenia is formed on the ancient lands of the Azerbaijan, of the Republic of Azerbaijan. So as this is basically the propaganda that Azerbaijani president has been, carrying out. So this is kind of one of the ways how they spread their propaganda. And I have to say that we had, unfortunately, other horrible cases unfortunately, against crimes committed against our nation, our families. For example, immediately after the war, they could contact families of prisoners of war by requiring from them photos of the ladies, of mothers, of sisters. And when we had cases when they're claiming photos in exchange of information about the prisoners of war. So again, and then these photos they were showing to the prisoners of war. We have another thing. Their treatment of Armenian prisoners of war, the severe treatment, also is based on Christianophobic policies of the authorities of Azerbaijan. So, for example, we had a case when Azerbaijani soldiers forced one of Armenian prisoners of war to change their religion from Christian to Islam. And moreover, they burned the leg of this soldier. Moreover, we have credible statements that when Azerbaijani military armed forces or special forces, they just collected all crosses and destroyed them. They were particularly cruel, for example, toward all those prisoners of war who were baptized or who they could learn that they are baptized. So that by all means, Azerbaijani soldiers were and are still, I'm sure, unfortunately, are treating them, by using all the severe forms of torture. And again, they are confident that there would be no responsibility for them because they are only being encouraged. Their authorities are only encouraging them for this. And unfortunately, these policies of Azerbaijani authorities, they continue. This is an ongoing policy. And the root causes are in these policies. So these policies are the root causes. Very often they ask a question. International and different ambassadors, organizations ask questions to us. They ask, don't you think that there should be someday you should put an end on this? I mean, meaning this Caucasian region and to start living in peace. Well, I always say that as long as we have current authorities of Azerbaijan who are unpunished and there is total impunity, they will continue these policies. And because this policy is an excellent tool for them, political internal tool to distract the attention of their society from their own problems. That is why these, unfortunately, prisoners of war are the targets for these policies. And they actively are using it, and not only by inflicting torture, physical pain or suffering to our compatriots who are in prisons of Baku, but also causing mental suffering to our society, families and our Armenian society.
I know Garo has a question for Amine, but I wanted to interject, if I can, real quickly, Garo, and ask Uzay a question regarding, listening to Arman talk about the nature of the crimes, really, war crimes that have been committed. Coverage has been amazing. I should just say this outright because your coverage has been absolutely penetrating, I would say, because I think a lot of it's meticulously researched, and you cover the topics as they're happening in real time and with really great depth. So I commend you on that, Uzay. It's a pleasure to meet you. But what's going on ideologically? There has to be an ideological driver to this. It's impossible that human beings, act like this without any ideological underpinning. I have made it clear in other discussions that, without the driving ideology, you can't have this type of behavior. And when we think about what happens with POWs, what happens with, as Arman just mentioned, with respect to the involvement of citizens, the open involvement of citizens in ridiculing and torturing Armenian human beings, what is happening? What has your work shown in terms of the ideology, the narratives? What's happening?
I think the brainwashing and indoctrination of the Azeri society starts at a very early age, maybe in their homes when they are, little children, or definitely at schools. They are indoctrinated in Armenian hatred and all kinds of anti-Armenia propaganda. And I think their hatred against Armenians is both ethnic-based and religious-based. Mm-hmm. So they hate Armenians for their ethnicity and for their Christian religion. And this indoctrination is so deep, so invasive. I mean, when we look at the Azeri society, unfortunately, even much of the opposition, or maybe most of the opposition, supports the government in its war against Artsakh. So when we look at the so-called civil society, of course, there are some dissident voices here and there, but the majority still supports the government when it attacks Armenians. So where does this hatred come from? Well, it comes from their educational system, their media, and not just the government. I mean, the whole social and political system is against Armenians. And unfortunately, the Armenian hatred is what shapes their Azeri identity. I mean, take that Armenian hatred away from their identity, their Azeri identity, what is left? Not much. So I think this hatred against Artsakh, against Armenians, is what also unites them as a nation. It's an ethnic hatred, and it's a religious hatred. And it's a genocidal hatred, unfortunately, because every time when I look at their media, I understand the Azeri language. And when I look at their textbooks, for example, or remember the park, the so-called park they opened in Baku, showing the war crimes they committed in Artsakh, showing off, they were just glorifying those crimes. So the hatred is extremely deep. And I don't think there's this kind of hatred in the West today, this deep murderous hatred targeting an entire nation. So I think it might be a little difficult for Westerners to understand this hatred, but I think it's one of the most dangerous phenomena of our world today.
And I think that what you just said there is very important with respect to the difficulty of communicating this to the West, because the solutions that they put on the table with respect to Artsakh politically or diplomatically really show an ignorance of the actual reality on the ground ideologically and with respect to hatred. And I'm going to interject. I know, Garo, you have a question, but I want to ask Amine a question. It just occurred to me that if I can shift now really quickly to Vicken's story in particular, two questions really quickly. What efforts have been made by in his case in particular, by the governments, both of Armenia and Lebanon? That's one. And maybe related to that, are there opportunities for extradition? Have those types of issues been explored, or is that something that is not possible?
Let me just inform you about what we know and what Linda did and what we helped her and the situation of Vicken. First of all, Linda contacted many times the Ministry of Lebanese Foreign Affairs, and they did not too bad, good work. They helped her. They contacted many times the Azerbaijani ambassador or consulate in Lebanon, trying to get an appointment for many times. It wasn't, the reply wasn't positive, but they tried hard. Linda is contacting a lot of Lebanese Armenian deputy in the parliament, and as well many ministers or many president of Armenian parties in Lebanon, and they are trying their best to help as well. Regarding the appointment with the Azerbaijani embassy, the reply was negative till now. The Lebanese Foreign Affairs is doing their best with the ambassador of Lebanon in Iran and in Turkey as well, trying their best to help us. On the other hand, we met the United Nations Committee or representatives in Lebanon, and we after that we studied all the file and the case and legal research and the international conventions. What should be applied on the case of Vicken, and we prepared a very detailed letter and send it to the United Nations and as well to the International Red Cross and to the European Committee of Human Rights and to Human Rights Watch as well. Now just we are continuing our efforts, certainly with Linda and with her hard job in this subject. Now what we are trying to focus now is, as I mentioned before, is to get the protection of the Lebanese authorities with in harmony or in accordance with the Azerbaijani authorities, to allow us to go to Azerbaijan to get the protection, because we are afraid that if we go to Azerbaijan, maybe our visit will be tortured or controlled, or they wouldn't allow us to visit Vicken. So we are trying as much as we can with the Lebanese Foreign Ministry, Foreign Affairs, and other ways to get this protection. Till now, we don't have the approval of the protection. That's why we are afraid to go directly, and that's why we are searching for the help of a Turkish law firm. Why Turkish law firm? Because maybe when it's come to a Turkish lawyer, based on the good relationship between Turkey and Azerbaijan, he will be, between brackets, protected. And that's why we are searching for a Turkish lawyer. At the same time, we are trying to get the protection for us. If it's allowed for us and we get the approval of protection, we can go by ourselves, because already we studied all the case of Vicken and we get all the information, and we made all the what we can say, the legal researches related to a situation. So and Linda as well is continuing every day, every night, to be honest with you all, to support the case of her husband in many ways, and she's not stopping contacting all the possible ways or possible connections to get more information, to allow us to go to Baku and to defend the case of her husband with the unfair, unlegal detainment and imprisonment. Hopefully we can get positive reply from somewhere. Hopefully, we can at least get the visa or the ticket or the approval to go there, because as you know all, nothing is confirmed. If we can, if we go to Azerbaijan, maybe they don't allow us to do anything or to meet Vicken. That's what we are doing now.
I mean, what I was going to ask you, and you answered part of it, was, if you have tried to go and visit him, have you been denied access to see him as a lawyer of his choice to visit with him? But I understand your concerns and your efforts to try and secure that visit, but really have a visit that is secure. So let me ask you, the second part of my concern or inquiry was, have any religious leaders, either Armenian religious leaders or Lebanese religious leaders, have any such leaders tried to have a humanitarian-based visit as a clergy to this prisoner? If you know, have there been any such requests made?
But myself, I didn't made this kind of contacts. But Linda certainly, she can now confirm that she tried a lot of religious persons, Armenian religious and Maronites and Catholics, and even the Vatican ambassador in Beirut. She tried. They are trying to help her, but finally, as we know, that Azerbaijan is to use a very conservative word, is a very closed country. So
you know what it is? It's sad that that is the truth, that it is a very closed country. But Arman, Tatoyan, Karnig, and I have spent the last 2-3 years writing and working up against a propaganda machine that presents Azerbaijan as very tolerant, open, diverse society.
Which is not the case, totally.
I know. It's not the case, is it? Maybe I'll ask a question to piggyback on this issue to Karnig and Arman. My understanding was that, when you're supposed to exhaust remedies in a country before you take it to European courts, but if you can show, Karnig, that the likelihood of having a fair judicial proceedings in the country which you are trying to seek a remedy, whether in the case that you and I worked on having to do with the courts in Turkey, or in this case, the courts in Azerbaijan, you can directly go to United Nations Court of Human Rights or the European courts. Am I mistaken? And if I'm not, what efforts could be taken to at least get a fair review of what, by all accounts, appears to have been a sham trial?
Perhaps, Arman, I can say that there's been the European Court of Human Rights jurisprudence on the issue of the judicial forum in Azerbaijan as not being fair and adequate. Those cases have actually been decided. They were actually decided before the war, so there's already that jurisprudence. I think that a lot of the one thing, and again, Arman, you can kind of chime in on this, and offer some color here. But generally speaking, I think in any of these types of human rights situations, and this is why I say, and I said at the beginning, that our voice matters. These are large, liberation largely comes from advocacy. It comes advocacy not only in the courts, but in the public circles as well, in the diplomatic circles. And I think that's why the appeal is so important from Linda here to assist in every way that we can. You know, it's acknowledgement and recognition of what's going on that eventually puts pressure on the authorities to take action. And correct me if I'm wrong, Arman, but you know, it's a groundswell. It's not just the legal mechanism that has to work, but there has to be civil society involved and individuals involved and journalists involved to bring attention. And even then, it's an uphill battle. And maybe, Arman, you can comment on that a little bit about the value of the importance of our voices on this issue.
Karnig, you are absolutely right. So only legal mechanisms, of course, apparently, very apparently, are not sufficient. Moreover, Azerbaijan uses all the possibilities, every possibility to block legal ways of solving this issue. That is why, and by the way, they're using not only political tools and measures, taking measures, but also military. This is also very important. And they're using and so-called soft power as well. And by the way, very highly spreading fake information, trying to mislead the international community, presenting our prisoners of war as terrorists, right? Through artificial criminal cases. Why they launched them? They launched them to delay the process. But why delay that? To create this formal cover, you know, that we have an investigation and we have to finish this investigation. But why they tend to delay the process? Because they want to get as many benefits as they can from this process. One more thing, which is very important, as you rightly said, Karnig, international courts, and Garo very rightly mentioned also, international courts and engagement is very, very important. But we have the experience when Azerbaijan was very openly misleading European Court of Human Rights, for example. In my practice, we have a case when European Court of Human Rights the European Court applied to the Committee of Ministers of the Council of Europe, claiming that Azerbaijan is not complying, there is no compliance with international commitments, so that the core of this international commitments is being violated. And as the human rights defender of Armenia, I submitted also my special submission to the Committee of Ministers by confirming the application of the European Court of Human Rights. But unfortunately, what Azerbaijan did, they used all political tools, to kill these discussions, and not so that these discussions and the processes do not have any consequence. And that is why we have to be here active, and we have no right to keep this process silent or to allow this process to become silent. It should be always at the very top of the public discourse, everywhere. And because this is not, some people think that this is kind of an isolated issue as an end in itself, in the system of war or something. But this is one of the main things that should force us to work comprehensively, because this is one of the very main reflections of the Azerbaijani policies against us. So by this, they show that they will do the same against any Armenian, any person who represents Armenian ethnicity. This is what should unite us, yes, and raise to make our voices as high as possible, so that in order to be able to fight against the propaganda, misleading and fictitious propaganda of the Azerbaijani authorities, because they use even corruption is openly used, right? And we know all of us about this. So that is why I agree here again with you. And of course, we have journal, and I'm glad that we are very actively cooperating also with journalists. And Uzay, I would confirm that she's really active. We have other colleagues like Lindsay Snell, for example, other international colleagues from different media. We have to encourage them. We have to cooperate, and international lawyers are also very important. And that is why Amine Bashir his involvement is so important, and his colleagues as well.
Yeah, and I think this is a theme that Garo and I are focused on more and more as we've realized the value of these narratives and how these narratives are established and the impact that these narratives can have. And I know that we're running close on time, but I did want to ask Uzay another question, if I may, and that relates to these narratives. Uzay, you know, what is it that translates for the West? What are we doing wrong in our narratives? What are we not understanding about how the world of journalism works on these because, you know, like you said, from a moral, and as we heard from Amine and Garo and Arman as well, from a legal standpoint, you know, these are pretty, you know, clear issues of violations. You know, what should we be doing differently now, almost 2.5 years since the signing of the trilateral statement? You know, you've had quite a bit of success in having eyes on your writings and people, and you're influencing people's opinions. What is it that the rest of us as a community, as Armenians that are interested in you know, bringing these issues to light, what are we missing?
That's a very good question, a difficult one to answer. Well, first of all, when we look at this war, just like you said, it's so obvious it's so easy to see who the aggressor is. But when the war against Artsakh was first started in 2020, remember how the Western mainstream media covered it. They said both sides are attacking each other, and they were putting the blame on both Armenia and Azerbaijan for the ongoing war. So, but today they can't do it anymore, because even Aliyev said that we started the war. We started the war to liberate Nagorno-Karabakh. That's what he said. So I think what we need to reading. Why do I do what I do? Because I see that this is an ongoing genocide, and they are trying to destroy the entire Armenian nation for their ethnicity and religion. So, and I think about the prisoners of war and all the families that are suffering in Artsakh because of the ongoing blockade. I mean, how can you not care? So I do my best to learn more about these issues and write about them. I think more people, more Armenians should get involved in this fight on the journalistic front as well, and on the awareness. There should be more awareness campaigns, like information campaigns on an international level. You as individuals are doing a great job. I really admire what you do, and I'm honored to be joining you today. But I think maybe the government of Armenia should be doing more on a diplomatic level, or like to educate the press more. For example, they should contact all these international journalism associations directly and inform them, educate them, and maybe organize press conferences, maybe visit them in their offices and tell them what's going on, and call on them to report on this issue more objectively and more closely and more truthfully. I mean, there are some principles and values that we journalists should obey. And these are, objectivity, truthfulness, and other similar principles. Just call on them to try to do their jobs more properly. But I think there should be a more joint and professional effort to be able to do that. And the government of Armenia should be involved, the diaspora and it should be a really an organized effort and campaign to raise awareness. Because I think change, you said change, advocacy is so important. For change to happen, we need knowledge. We need people to be informed. And unfortunately, so many people in the West are still misinformed about the fact that Armenians are being exposed to a second genocide. So what should we do to raise awareness? So many people in their own professional fields should come together and start a joint campaign. That's the first thing that occurs to me.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fantastic approach, Uzay, and I think that what you said about the second genocide is something that Arman has mentioned as well. And, coming from such different backgrounds, I think that's the confluence of that is really important, because in the end, whether it's the diasporan organizations and or the government of Armenia and the government of Artsakh, like you said, it's an assault on the entire nation. This is a collective effort to rid the world of a substantial Armenian presence. And I think that, that requires a collective effort, and hopefully that's something that's a movement that will, as everything with Armenians, it always seems that we're late on taking the important and deliberate steps, but perhaps there's still an opportunity here to make a real difference, like you said, and I appreciate that. And before we close, I have to ask this question to Linda, and maybe this is how we can close our discussion. And Amine, if I ask a question that's something she shouldn't answer, you can please feel free to interject. But my question is a real simple and human question, Linda. Have you spoken to Vicken, and what has he said to you?
فيكن اتصل فينا نهار الاثنين من بعد الدعاية اللي طلعت على السوشيال ميديا انه هو انقتل بسجن باكو.
Maybe if we can have the interpreter interpret that for us.
Vicken called me on Monday after the social media campaign saying that he was killed in Baku.
أنا فيكن ما بيعرف أي شيء عم بيصير برا. نحن عم نحاول نعطي أمل، نعطي قوة، وناطرينه. هو منيح، هو رح يضل قوي. وعطول بالتليفون بيقول أنا بريء، ساعدوني.
Vicken doesn't know what is happening in the outside world. I'm trying to give him hope and strength. We are standing by him. He's saying that he is good and that he is innocent and that he needs help.
Well, thank you so much, Linda, for giving us a little bit of a light as to what the reality is. And I want to thank all of our guests for really exposing some important themes and ideas in this important interview. And we do appreciate each and everybody's work, obviously, for Vicken. Linda, I think that the entire Armenian world and the entire world of caring and empathetic people feel your pain. They do, and they do want to help. I know that we've gotten a lot of messages during this broadcast of people that want to assist, so I will encourage them to reach out to the people on this screen. Obviously, the video will stay here, and you can reach out to Frontlines, and we can put people into contact as well, because I know that people want to help. And with that, I want to pass it on to Garo for his final thoughts.
Thank you, Karnig. I want to personally, on your behalf and on behalf of all of our followers and viewers, thank Linda Euljeckjian for your courage to come on the air and speak of what is extremely personal and painful family trauma that you are going through. I want you to know that when I say that we are here for you, I mean that we are here for you, okay? And we will continue. You are welcome. We are going to continue to be in touch with you and with your very capable family attorney, with whom I've had the pleasure of speaking previously before we were on the air earlier and yesterday. I want to thank you, Uzay, for your continued courage. You really are one of my heroes. Every time I read an article penned by you, it's full of courage, and your courage and your candor and honesty comes through and through. And of course, I would be remiss if I did not thank our beloved Arman Tatoyan, because when I think of Arman, I think of truth. And when I think of truth, I mean, I am empowered because truth in the end does prevail.
Exactly.
And is unequivocal and undeniable. And the truth of the unfairness of what has gone on with prisoners of war, with captives, with hostages that continue to remain in Azerbaijani prisoners will have to come to light, and truth must prevail. And we each have a role in that journey. I often say, how difficult is it to take a few minutes out of your day? A few minutes out of your day, every day, focus, concentrate, do one thing. Don't do two things, just do one thing that advances the human rights and the human interests of those who are not in a position to advance it for themselves. I am touched by the words of Linda. You were quoted a few days back. I ask you to do everything in your power to secure the immediate release of my husband, Vicken Euljeckjian, and all Armenian hostages held illegally in Azerbaijani jails before it is too late to save their lives. I couldn't agree with you more. Yes, yes, and yes. Let me close by two remarks, one from U.S. Congressman, a dear friend of mine, Adam Schiff, who yesterday said Azerbaijan's continued violation of human rights following the conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh, in Artsakh, is unacceptable. Prosecuting prisoners of war is a flagrant violation of international conventions and further evidence of Azerbaijan's grotesque disregard for human rights and international law. While we continue working to secure the immediate release of Armenian prisoners of war, the United States must impose harsh consequences on Azerbaijan and end the waiver that has allowed US military assistance to flow to the regime in Baku. We must not allow Azerbaijan to violate human rights and trample on international norms with impunity. And finally, an excerpt from the Foreign Ministry of Artsakh on the obstruction by Azerbaijan of the efforts by the Russian peacekeepers to return citizens of Artsakh to Artsakh, which happened the last 36 hours. In an environment of complete impunity, the criminal actions committed by Azerbaijan against the people of Artsakh are becoming increasingly threatening, both in nature and scale. The inaction of the international community in the face of such serious violations of human rights is tantamount to tacit approval, if not complicity in the inhumane actions of official Baku. Immediate and decisive action by the United Nations Security Council, which has the appropriate mandate and tools, is an absolute necessity to immediately end the illegal blockade and stop the crimes in Azerbaijan against the people of Artsakh, which continue before the eyes of the international community. We each have work to do. The truth is calling. Let's each take a few moments, if not an hour of our day, and be advocates for the truth. Peace unto you all. Linda, may you reunite with your husband and the father of your children, and may all prisoners of war reunite with their loved ones, and may we see the day that Azerbaijan respects human rights and respects its own agreement to exchange prisoners of war, regardless of what label they give them, and put this human nightmare to an end. Everyone have a good day, good evening, until we meet again. Thank you.
Thank you. And I have to say that thank you so much for all of you. We are so grateful for your help. On the name of Vicken family and Linda, thank you so much Karnig, Arman, Garo, and Uzay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And towards from me, Garo, there is a tradition that Garo always makes the closing with powerful, let's say, his interference and powerful words. But I want really to express our appreciation, very deep appreciation to our friends Garo and Karnig, because I want that your viewers, our compatriots know that you have been always the driving force for me personally, and for all of us, despite all the problems with the time differences. You were always with us, always, 24/7. And I remember in all the cases when even we were thinking that the situation is hopeless, Karnig and Garo were the ones who were pushing us forward, me personally, and being a model to believe in and to encourage us. And I'm very inspired by your words, Garojan, Karnig-jan, and you even now, you are always with us, helping us with analysis of evidence, preparation of reports, even in collecting facts. I remember when we were in Munich, I could only admire how you were integrated so well into the environment, and you could feel the real process, what is happening there. But this is because you are so well engaged in the process. You know so well what is happening, so that you take everything so easily, and then you help us very greatly. I think without your help, it would be very, very difficult for us and for me personally to push things forward. And thank you for inspiring us. Thank you for being so professional, and thank you for being such a so powerful and great patriots. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.